Welcome everybody to a wrap-up video talking about the end of our favorite games that came out in the year 2019. My name is Nick.
I'm Mike.
I'm Travis.
And as a quick little introduction before we jump right into it, this is where we come together, we talk about games that we played that came out this year that we really fell in love with, and pretty much these are our, not technically like our game of the year, but this is like what we would vote for of the games that we played if there was going to be a game of the year about it. So who wants to give the spotlight to some games they fell in love with?
You can start, Travis.
Go, Travis, go.
Oh god. Okay, so I've realized that this year has been a year of me buying a lot of games, playing a lot of it, and not beating them. Doesn't mean I didn't like them. It just means that I got distracted because ADHD is a bitch sometimes. So I did really enjoy Kingdom Hearts 3 that came out in the very beginning of the year in January. And then I've gotten halfway through Resident Evil 2 with Mike, and I have really enjoyed everything I've played. We've just kind of been busy and haven't finished recording it, but I definitely want to in the future. Borderlands 3, I'm in the middle of streaming, and that has been super fun. It's everything I wanted it to be, so that's always good. I started playing Jedi Fallen Order. I'm not really that far into it, so I can't really give an honest opinion on it yet. I've basically just beat the first boss, and that's it. Started playing Pokemon Sword. I have beaten all of Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the campaign, and I beat all of the levels from Mario Maker 2 that Nintendo put in the story mode thing. I have beaten all of Astral Chain, so basically I've played a lot of games, and it's hard for me to say which two have been my favorite because, like I said, when it comes to actually beating them, it's basically just been the platformer and Astral Chain and Call of Duty.
Yeah. Well, I can start with what my favorite is then.
Okay.
And then we can see if that
Wait,
helps
you
at
going
all.
with your favorite or you going with your second favorite?
Well, one of my favorites. I can't pick between them.
Okay.
They're like my children. So I think the one that I'll start with is... I'll start with Resident Evil 2, because I could go on for a long time with that one. So I think the biggest thing that I want to start off with this game is I played the original Resident Evil 2 a while ago, and I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It's very outdated. If you never played the original Resident Evil, don't bother, because you're not going to enjoy the original games anymore. Only because they have tank controls, and it's definitely a style that if you haven't played it before and you've played modern games, you're probably not going to enjoy it. It's kind of like you had to have experienced it in order to kind of have that feel for it, or else people are going to play it and say, this isn't fun, this is dumb, these controls are bad. So it's hard because those games, as someone that likes Resident Evil, I want to tell people to try all the games, but people are going to go back and not like them. So when this game came out, Resident Evil 2, and it completely changed the control scheme, it changed the camera angle, it changed everything about this game, I was really excited because it was basically reconstructing what Resident Evil 2 was and modernizing the whole experience. I don't think, and this is kind of a big statement, I don't think any game has ever been remastered as well as this game was, because they changed everything. It's not like they just gave it an HD upgrade and made things a little bit more efficient. They completely changed the camera angles. It went from a fixed camera to over the shoulder.
Which is a very big, really good quality of life upgrade.
Oh, yeah. And then the other thing they changed was they got rid of tank controls and then changed it so it's just normal controls. And both of those things are huge, and they could have easily just kept those in. When they remade Resident Evil, the original game, in HD, they did change tank controls, but they kept the fixed camera angles, and it was obnoxious. It was complicated because you need tank controls on a fixed camera game, the way that it was set up for that game. So I'm really glad that they made the decision to just completely overhaul the entire game. And then on top of that, they added in these extra cutscenes that weren't in the original game. Each of the different things that were in the original game, like Mr. X showing up out of nowhere, they changed how everything worked so it just looked better. So it's a completely new experience that totally pays homage. And it's so weird. It almost just feels like they said, hey, we're going to completely get rid of everything that game looked like. We're just going to redo the scripts and then remake the game from the ground up. And it came out so awesome. And so I think like this is just the perfect remake. I don't think I've ever seen a game that was remade so well before. And then on top of that, the gameplay, and it's awesome. I've gone on and on about how emotional the story in this game is, how there are parts of the game where I was legitimately getting stressed and anxious just because of the plots. When you think of horror games, you don't typically think of plots that like actually speak to you on an emotional level. Outlast didn't have me crying over any character's death, but Resident Evil 2 did. Resident Evil 2 really had you fighting for a purpose, and I think that kind of added to that fear because there were people in that game that you really cared about. The little girl named Sherry in that game, you worry that she could legitimately die in the game, and so you do everything you can to save her. And the same goes for Leon and Ada and all of them. And so there's so many different dynamics in this game that I think make it so much fun to play. It's more than just a horror game, and I think anytime I talk about this game, that's what I try to preach. Because there's a lot of people that say, oh, it's just a jump scare game when they think of horror games. But Resident Evil 2 has so much depth in it that like I can't imagine a horror game, in my opinion, being better than this one. And I know that's kind of a big statement. So I'm so glad that they decide to remake this game. And I have a very good feeling that this time next year, we'll be having a very similar conversation with the Resident Evil 3 remake that will be coming out next year. So I'm really hoping that Capcom learned their lesson on how to remake games. The original Resident Evil didn't have a great remake. This game was awesome. And so really excited for Resident Evil 3 that's going to be coming out next year. And if you haven't had the chance to play Resident Evil 2, I would highly recommend you play this game. It's the perfect modern representation of what the original game was.
And considering the jump from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 4, that also is a huge feat. Well, yeah, pretty much. From PS1 to this generation, and for things to work out this smoothly, they had to work their ass off. And so I'm really happy that this one was shown that, hey, you can remake games that are that old successfully. And this is pretty much a testament to that, even when making some changes like that. But you can't, I think the best way to say it is you can't really mess with it too much, because Mike, they didn't do any like big changes like that, did they?
Not really, no. I mean, everything looked huge just because, like you said, the difference between PS1 and Xbox One and PS4 is a big jump. But outside of just a huge graphical overhaul, no. The game, pretty much the story in it is almost exactly the same.
Okay, so again, people, when you're remaking games, please look what Resident Evil 2 did right. Please. I'm sorry, I've seen too many remakes just completely bomb because of the fact they try to do too much, and honestly, there's not any point. Anyway, I guess I'll talk about mine then instead of, again, preaching like Mike does on Resident Evil 2. But yeah, so this one, I am going to give an honorable mention. I don't think I'm going to give an honorable mention to one. I'll talk about this one. I think somebody else is going to say it. But Kingdom Hearts 3, what Travis said before, I do have to say this is probably my runner-up for the my second favorite game of the year. And one of the things that might not really have a good defense for it is because I don't really play a lot of games that came out this year. And looking back at it and looking back at the fun that I had at the games, I was definitely going to put Dragon Quest Builders 2 as one of these, but I couldn't because it came out in 2018. I was like, well, damn, that's a technicality. But I really did like the gameplay of Kingdom Hearts 3. It's one of the reasons why we did a breakdown on it. We had speculation for what the trailer or possible Kingdom Hearts 4 could be. In terms of what I wanted out of Kingdom Hearts 3, at least gameplay-wise, I got it and more. I got to play with the characters that I wanted to play as. The combat felt so fluid and dynamic. Yeah, it was easier than I expected, but I don't think that in terms of gameplay experience, if I'm going to go back and play one solely for gameplay, I will go back to Kingdom Hearts 3. I just enjoyed playing the game, and while some of it seemed to be very easy at times, I never felt like there was always a spectacle. There was always what was happening on the screen that I was just enjoying seeing. And every different art style, every different time when Sora, Donald, and Goofy turned into some different, like with Monsters Inc., they turned into monsters. When it came down to Pirates of the Caribbean, when they got into the pirate costumes, everything about like the gameplay of that game I thought was fantastic. Mm-hmm. So yes, I put Kingdom Hearts 3 here because I haven't really played a ton of games that came out in 2019. But overall, as a game, it's not my favorite Kingdom Hearts, but I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Yeah. I mean, I tried to kind of order my list. Kingdom Hearts 3, I think, was, if I had a pinpoint, I would say it's probably like number 4 or 5 on my list of games that came out this year.
Yeah.
For a lot of the same things you said, the gameplay in it was amazing. I loved exploring the world.
It was amazing.
Yeah, and that's why I'm struggling with the words for it, because just each world had something different and everything was themed so differently, and they did a good job. I wouldn't say they did an amazing job with each world's gimmick. Like Toy Story, like being in those little robotic suits, or the pirate ship combat in Pirates of the Caribbean. I like all of those games. They had really good gameplay elements. They weren't amazing, but the actual just basic combat was practically flawless for what you would want in a Kingdom Hearts game. I don't think that really needs to be improved upon anymore at this point. It's pretty much perfected as far as I'm concerned. So the gameplay in it was awesome. We talked about it a little bit when we talked about our DLC thoughts for the January releases, but I do have some quips with the story of it. I feel like the story, they had some holes that we were hoping they would patch up. Instead, they just ripped the holes wide open, which is a little bit disappointing. I've been such a defender of the story of Kingdom Hearts, saying, well, they're not trying to be super serious. You just kind of got to go with it. This game kind of made me go a little more back on that and say, like, I don't think they really know what they're doing with the story. It almost starts to feel like they're kind of just winging things in a way, and overcomplicating things.
They tried foreshadowing way too much, I would say.
Right, and it's just they're just digging their hole deeper and deeper, which is why it's so low, I think, compared to some of the other games I played, just because, like, I'm so big on story in games. Like a game,
which would make perfect sense for you to rate it lower for that same reason, because the story isn't anything fantastic.
Right.
But the gameplay and the spectacle, I keep saying spectacle because it's the best way that I can describe it, of the different worlds and the different keyblades that you get, just keeps you just in awe of what it's doing.
Yeah.
Story, yeah, you're right. Story's weak.
Yeah.
But the gameplay, so damn good.
Yeah, no, it totally nailed the mark on one of those things, and then it missed the mark on the other thing. So it's a fun game, and I totally think it deserves a lot of credit, and I totally agree with it being one of the best games of the year. I also, in my heart, it's also one of the most disappointing games of the year, just because of how much it lacked on the story side of things. But it's fun.
Totally accept that. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, good point. Travis.
Okay,
you have
so
your favorite
now
game?
after some careful consideration of looking at all the games that I have played,
He's gonna crown a winner.
well, I'll say my second favorite game is probably going to be Jedi Fallen Order, because it's everything that I wanted in an actual Star Wars game. I can do so many cool things. Even though it's not my type of game usually, where it's like, here's a boss, I have to learn every single one of his patterns and then work around it and get a couple hits in, and then it's really grindy. But for some reason, when I'm feeling like I'm the Jedi, I don't want to say Master because he's not Jedi Master yet, but it just feels so much cooler because you're doing it with a lightsaber, and then like I really like the progression tree that it has, where it really rewards your exploration. Like, you can find parts of lightsabers to change its color, which doesn't really matter, but then you can also find the double lightsaber, which is super cool, the one that Darth Maul has. So it definitely, I really like anything that rewards your exploration in games. And then even the save files, it's pretty much like going to the campfire and stuff in Dark Souls and stuff like that, where you get to save it, but if you do, then it respawns all of the enemies that you had already killed. So it's kind of like, is it worth actually saving, or should I just or you can still save, but then you can't heal. But if you heal, then all the people respawn. So it's kind of a balance of, is it worth it for me to actually go back to full health, or do I try and venture onward without it? Because if you die, then you have to at least hit the enemy that killed you. Otherwise, you lose all of the progress that you made, which really sucks.
No, it seems like it'd be a good fit for a Star Wars game.
So, I'm hoping EA has learned that, hey, story-based games without pay-to-win stuff and DLC and a whole bunch of other garbage actually does work if you put in the care for the game.
I think the reason why this game turned out so well is because EA didn't have any influence. So this should be a lesson to EA of, hey, people are making a promising game, stay the fuck out of it.
Because, like, it has been really well received by pretty much everybody. Like, people who aren't that big of Star Wars fans really enjoy the game because it has really fun gameplay, and people who do really enjoy Star Wars isn't like, this is garbage. Because that's what Battlefront has been for me since EA took over.
Oh, yeah. But what about your number one then, Travis? We all named our number two.
Okay.
Well, for Mike, it'd be probably tied
number one, I put Borderlands 3.
That doesn't surprise me at
because
all.
Borderlands 2 is very dear to my heart, and Borderlands 3 did everything that Borderlands 2 did without having it feel repetitive, as in like all the humor and jokes that it had. But then it expanded so much. Like, there are so many planets and things to do, and then like the weapons have just gone completely insane. Like, you're never using the same thing for very long because there's just millions of guns that you can find. So I've been super happy with how the sequel has gone so far. I'm mad at myself that I haven't played more of it, but I've kind of been MIA in streaming, and I don't want to get ahead in the story and have you guys miss things. If I was smart, I would just start my own play by myself file, but you know, I also kind of want like that genuine reaction to the story when I'm streaming versus like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened.
Yeah.
Which I know I did spoil something because I was playing with CJ a little bit, but that's not too much further in the story from where I stopped at streaming. But I've completely loved the game. They added so many features that just felt really smooth and not completely off from what it really was, which is usually the flaw to sequels, because that's why I got off the Call of Duty bandwagon for a long time. I also really enjoyed the new one. There's not too much craziness in it, so it feels like a Call of Duty game to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Mike, you gonna be giving the crown to your number 1/2?
Yes. But before I do that, I want to give some honorable mentions, because there are two games that I know no one's going to be talking about, and I think they really deserve to be shouted out. The first one being Outer Worlds. I absolutely adored this game. I can't give it my number 1, but this is my favorite genre of game, I would say, is just that Western-style RPG, because I love just going into a game and just turning it on, and I can just like shut my mind off and just like walk. And I think that's so fun to do in a game where like I don't have to constantly be like trying to process everything going on, and there's no like super tight platforming where I need total concentration. I can just like sit back, and like there's been times where I played Outer Worlds while like also like watching a movie on the side, and I'm just kind of like harvesting stuff or like grinding while I'm like doing something on my laptop. And I love that. I love that I can just kind of go into this like sleep mode in my brain and just kind of play the game. And then there's also parts of the game that are awesome. I think the story in the game is really cool. I can't give it my number 1 spot because it didn't feel super fleshed out. It felt like just kind of it was just a story of like, oh, okay, there are these bad people and we have to kill them. Do you want to kill them or join the evil people? And that was pretty much it. It wasn't very like complex or anything, which I think was kind of the point. This wasn't meant to be this like groundbreaking new AAA game. It was just meant to be like, hey, you know, we're a fun Western RPG, kind of in the same vein as the Fallout games. Play us for the gameplay. And I think it completely nailed the gameplay of a Western RPG about as well as I could have ever asked this game to. I'm a sucker for these games, so even if this game was bad, I probably would have enjoyed it. But I think they just did such a good job of having a world that's fun to explore. The only other quip I have is on the overworld map, they have planets that are unvisitable. Is that the right word? Like, you can't go visit them. And some of them...
Unvisibable doesn't sound like a word, but
yeah,
sounds about right.
It works for what I'm trying to say, I guess.
Yeah.
And a couple of them make sense, because a couple planets are gas giants. Obviously, you can't go walk around on a gas giant. But there's some planets in the game that say, oh, this is like, it's a hot planet where the mining company lives, and it's impossible to go visit there. And I'm like, why? I want to go see the planet. So some people speculate it's probably future DLC, that maybe they're just holding this planet there so that later on they're going to add this planet as something you can explore. But for now, it's so frustrating because I really want to go explore those areas and I can't. But outside of those little things, it's such a fun game. I think it totally nailed the Western RPG style amazingly. So that is my first shout out. The second one I want to talk about is a game I know no one was going to mention. That is After Party. Oh my god, I love this game so much. Night School Studio has become like one of my favorite video game developers. They also released Oxenfree for anyone that's played that game. that game is equally awesome. This game is, the whole plot of this game is you're two college-age kids that die somehow. They don't really know how, and then they end up in hell. And
that was on the State of Play, right?
yeah, I believe so. Yeah. And
okay, that was that game.
yeah, and there was a little twist where if you can beat Satan in a drinking game, you can get out of hell. And so the whole game is like you working up. Satan makes a deal where you have to like go meet two of his lackeys, and if you can beat them in a drinking contest, then you face him. So there's kind of like a working your way up, and the game is so funny. Just the two main characters and the bickering back and forth. There's different drinks in the game that will give you different things. So like there's a drink that gives you courage, but then there's like random drinks that will like make you talk like a pirate, or just like random shit. And there's so many dialogue options because of that. You can spend like one section of the game yammering on like you're a pirate, or you can drink a drink that makes you an asshole, and then you're just being rude to everyone. It's so funny. It's a game that's almost entirely dialogue, but there's little mini games in it too. Like there's beer pong in the game, or there's like dance contests and stuff like that. So there's a lot of variety in the game, and I know the game has slightly different endings depending on how you do. It's nothing major, but there's like the choices you make in this game can kind of influence how the game ends up, which I think is kind of cool. There's also certain quests that you have to decide between, so it's the kind of game where a second playthrough could look completely different than your first playthrough. But it's such an awesome game. It's absolutely hilarious, and I would totally recommend. I've always said this is like the perfect game for Matt, just because it's hell and there's a lot of like drinking and being an asshole, and there's nothing better for Matt than a game like that. So those are my two little shout out type games. And then the last game, and this is my big game, and I'm not going to talk about it for too long, is Super Mario Maker 2. Because how could I not talk about Super Mario Maker 2?
That one should have been so obvious.
Yeah, I've played quite a bit of this game. I've never like sat down and just played this game for a long period of time, but it's always the game that I go back to. Like, I recently beat Pokemon Shield. The first game I play after is this one. After I beat Outer Worlds, this is the first game I go back to. So Mario Maker 2 is kind of that game that I just play when I don't know what to play. And so I've played this game nonstop. It, to me, is like the perfect game because even the bad levels in this game are fun. Like, the bad in this game makes this game good, if that makes any sense. Because you enjoy playing, like, these random troll levels that pop up out of nowhere. On release, this game wasn't super great, but they've been adding so much, like, multiplayer and stuff like that. And I feel like this game has gotten so much more fun. One of the things I've been wanting to do is I want to do some multiplayer for our channel. That's one of the things that I'm, like, I want to start pushing more for. But again, I'm not going to ramble on too much about this game, but it's really fun. All the level creating stuff in it's a lot of fun. I don't do a lot of the level creation. I like to play kind of random people's levels, but it's such a brilliant game. I feel like they added so much great stuff. Now that they have the new Link costume, it's awesome. I like it. Just adds so much more to the game. Now that you have like bow and arrows and your sword and shields and all that in the game, there's just it gives really good level designers a platform to make really awesome levels. And I think that's what makes this game so much fun. And I love it because I can do like a really hard Kaizo level that I spend like 2-3 hours trying to beat. And then right after that, I can do like a troll level that pisses me off. And then I can go and do a level that takes you 2 seconds to beat. And you just sit there and do nothing. It's like just the variety in this game is so awesome. And it's the game that will never get boring because of that. Because there's always something new in that game, which I think is so cool. So that was my game of the year. And I think it's one of the best games I've ever played. So
I'm just super happy that they finally made it where you can play the multiplayer with your friends.
Yes. That was the big thing it was lacking, and I'm so glad they finally...
Not that we've taken advantage of it at all, but it's there.
Well, on my last...
Not yet.
I did a stream, my last stream, I did Mario Maker 2, and I took viewer levels, and actually had someone that joined me. It was just kind of random viewer, and we did viewer levels together. And so we did all the viewer levels in multiplayer, which was a ton of fun. Even though some of them did not work out well, and we ended up like totally trolling each other, and it just turned into like a shit show. But it was so much fun, and it made me realize like multiplayer on this game with people you know or people you can actually like talk to is such a blast, and it just opens the door and gives you like hours and hours of new content. So it's so cool.
Oh yeah, every so often, like I'm not a big level creator, but every idea that I have for a Mario Maker 2 level, most of the time they're multiplayer multiplayer like versus levels, I just write them down on a post-it note for when I do it. I've only made one just to test the actual creation for it, and it's very user friendly.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I like the fact, and I have a couple of ideas that I want to put it to action soon once I finish up some more of the other game that I'm going to be mentioning. But yeah, so I agree with you, Mike, and I was really hoping that Mario Maker 2 was going to be there because I wasn't talking about it, because I'm not the biggest person to really play a ton of levels, but I do recognize that it is definitely one of the best games, if not, like, in my mind, definitely one of the top 5 games released this year.
Right.
But yes. So I do want to actually correct something I said earlier. So when I looked at the release date for Dragon Quest 2 or Dragon Quest Builders 2, it just was released in Japan in 2018. It was released in July of 2019 for America for Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4. So I want to give shout outs to that one too, because that one is also super fun and a very easy way to kill a couple hours. I've really enjoyed my time with that game as well. But so I'm now going to be talking about the game that I would actually crown as my favorite, and that is Death Stranding. And this is going to be a very convoluted explanation, so stick with me on this. This game has garbage gameplay. Some of the worst, stupidest gameplay that I've seen in any game that I've ever played. The concept and the story of the game blows my mind to no end. I think this is one of the coolest experiences I've ever had playing a game, and I'm starting to see like the genius that everybody talks about when they talk about Kojima. If you're talking from a pure gameplay perspective and arguably from a game perspective, no, it's not the best game ever. But as an experience and as what the game is, and as you're playing the game, it blows my freaking mind every single time I play it. And I understand that like the missions can get very repetitive and some of the delivery stuff can get annoying after a while, and I will definitely be one to attest. The gameplay isn't anything that's going to keep people coming back to it, but what the game is one of the coolest mind trips I've ever been a part of, and it's really cool because you can tell Kojima wants you to make other people's journeys easy and not to focus on your own, and that is conveyed so well through game mechanics in this game. I'm not going to say the game is really fun to play, or games that you'd want to play for like hours on end, but just the experience of Death Stranding, I think, is one of the coolest things I've experienced this year. And I'll be honest, before we were recording this video, I was playing Death Stranding. I think it is so cool of a game. And I'm going to reiterate this. The gameplay isn't good. So if you're trying to talk about the gameplay, I concede that it's not good gameplay. But what the game is, and as you're playing it, is mind-blowing.
Yeah. See, it's funny. I haven't had a chance to play it yet because I was trying to finish a couple other games that I had. But like Death Stranding totally sounds like my kind of game because I love story and I don't need great gameplay to enjoy a game. So that's actually the next game I have. Now that I beat the Pokemon game, I want to play Death Stranding, and you saying that has me excited for it. I've heard so many different things about it where like I think if you're a gameplay person, I've seen people just totally bash this game, saying this is so boring, it's the same thing over and over. But then on the other side, I've heard so many people say, but dude, once you get to like this part of the game, it just blows your mind and it's so crazy. So it totally seems like it's just, what side are you on? Are you here to like experience something, or do you want fun gameplay? And there's nothing wrong with wanting fun gameplay. That just means this game is going to be bad for you. This game was not made for everybody.
No, you're absolutely 100% right. I cannot reiterate this enough. This game is not for everybody, and I'm going to scream that right now because it's not for everyone. And we say that about a lot of games, and there's a lot of games that we've talked about that definitely had some arguing back and forth about whether the game's good, whether the game was rushed, whatever. This game is a fantastic experience, and I keep saying the word experience for a reason. Core game, it's nothing special.
Right.
But that means that if you're a player that, I'll be honest, and I don't mean to stereotype, but this is going to be kind of a stereotype. If you're one of the people that just tries to go for online shooting, like online first-person shooters, this isn't going to be a game that's going to engage you on a deeper level. But if you are one of the people that just kind of wants to have a more relaxing experience, not too difficult of gameplay, and just enjoy a game that you've never played before, and I guarantee you've never played a game like this before, this is what the game is good for.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm excited for that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
So yeah, I think, Mike, you would probably like it, and I think Travis would probably like it too, because we're not people who would get obsessed with the gameplay mechanics and trying to be entertained. I wouldn't recommend it to like Matt though. I think that like Matt's a person who really does get involved in the gameplay and really wants to play those really wants to play those games that challenge him or whatnot.
Right.
And I've seen him get involved in some games I didn't expect him to get really involved into, like Tetris 99 he really likes as well.
Yeah.
But for people who swing the other direction, that's what Death Stranding is for.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't say this enough. I do recommend it if you want a completely new experience, and I've gotten that and more. So I would recommend Death Stranding, but that's just me, and I know that not everybody shares that opinion.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for me, it depends on how much of like how slow that gameplay part is, because I think that's part of the issue I have with Breath of the Wild is like I didn't get fully immersed in exploring, so then it's just kind of me groaning about having to climb this big ass mountain to get the one little temple or whatever shrine that I'm trying to get to. So then to me it's like, okay, I'm wasting all this time just trying to sprint to this place just so I can then get this, so then I can climb a little higher, so then I can get to this new place.
I will say that if you want to compare it to Breath of the Wild, I think there's a little more, because Breath of the Wild you kind of have to plan a lot of your sections. Plan a lot of your sections in terms of, or maybe not plan, but kind of have the sporadic, I want to see what's over there, and that's where a lot of the fun of Breath of the Wild comes from. Death Stranding does have a little bit different of a motivation when you play it. It's not, I want to see what's on the top of that cliff. It's like when you're playing the game, it's like, I kind of want to see I kind of want to see this kind of wilderness area, and like how I can optimize like maybe this delivery or something like that, because you play as a porter, which is like you play as Norman Reedus, who's pretty much a delivery man to an extent, and you're kind of in like the very skeleton of the game, you're making deliveries. But your motivation isn't, because Breath of the Wild, your motivation is almost purely gameplay focused. In Death Stranding, it's more story focused, it's more narrative focused. And so it's not about like all this flashy action combat. It's all about a lot of quiet introspection when you're playing this game. Like this game, I believe, won Best Score. It did win Best Score, like Best Music, for a reason. It's because there's certain sections of the game where you're not supposed to have like enemies coming at you left and right, and you're jumping in the air and throwing a bomb at them. It's going to be more of a reflection on your journey and a look back at like how you've come from, or where you've come from and where you're going. Right. So I know I've gushed about it a little bit more than I expected to, but I think that if it sounds interesting to you, I would recommend trying it.
Yeah, no, for sure. It definitely seems like that kind of game where if this sounds interesting, you'll probably love it. If it doesn't sound interesting, stay the hell away from it.
Yes, I cannot agree with that more.
Yeah.
All right, do we want to give any other games to mention before we wrap this up?
I wanted to give an honorable mention to Astral Chain, because I did really enjoy the combat of that game. I think the reason why it wasn't higher on my list was the campaign was a lot shorter than I was hoping it would be. And, but the campaign of it was really cool. It was like really interactive and fast-paced, which I always really enjoy. I already said the Call of Duty went back to its more original roots, which was super nice. We talked about Kingdom Hearts, and then Fire Emblem was neat in that there were 3 separate stories, but I think because they focused on 3 separate stories, none of them really stood out as amazing, which is why it was pretty much bottom of my list of games that I played this year. Because I'm like Mike and I like a good story, and that the gameplay was really fun.
Right.
Oh, I have my opinions. You'll hear my opinions on Three Houses soon enough, everyone.
And Pokemon is Pokemon.
Yeah.
Pokemon is Pokemon. What a great note to end on. The Pokemon game definitely has Pokemon.
It does have Pokemon. Not all of them, but it has Pokemon.
Oh, geez.
Anyway, comment section, just so we can avoid the controversy of Pokemon. Comment section below. Tell us what your favorite game of the year was.
That was
tell
Pokemon.
Us if yes, it has Pokemon. Yeah, favorite game of the year. Tell us about if you're excited for some new games coming out in 2020, because there's a couple of them that we're definitely going to be talking about in a couple months. That's scary. But
definitely not
thank you all for
Animal
joining
Crossing.
us for 2019. And my God, I'm excited for 2020 and the games that are coming then. So without further ado, I hope that you guys have a fantastic end of 2019 and an even better 2020. Bye-bye.
Bye.